Well, hello to my LinkedIn family, and today to my Facebook family as well as my YouTube channel as well. So we're trying the Coffee with Bob live on all three channels. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we'll give it a go. Today, I am so very pleased to have some new connections with me, and that are working on something that is very passionate and near and dear to my heart as well too. They're working on a film called Scrap, and I'll let them talk about it, which is amazing. I have Rachel Stander, who is the dark-haired beauty you see in the upper right-hand corner, hopefully, I think, depending on your screen. And below her, I have her production partner, writer, and director, Vivian Kerr. And this film is a social justice film. At least I consider it to be a social justice film. They'll explain it more. But what's really interesting, is they're crowdfunding this film. And if you look at the bottom of your screen there is the link, the address for the WeFunder page for scrap.film. Please go to it. Every little bit helps, and they are getting closer to their goal, I believe. Guys, thank you so much for being with me. I really appreciate it, and I'm really excited to learn more about the film and what you guys got going on.
Thank you so much, Bob.
No, you're welcome. You're very welcome. Yeah. Rachel, why don't you start us off and start explaining this a little bit?
Yeah, so you and I talked a little last week, but just to sort of give a recap here of like what the film is. It's an independent feature film about an adult brother and sister who are estranged until life circumstances force them to, come together again. And then, as you mentioned, sort of the social aspect of it is that it is set against the homelessness crisis. It's set in Los Angeles, so it's sort of, it's tied to that. But as we all know, the homelessness crisis is not constrained to Los Angeles.
Right.
Housing insecurity is widespread and comes in many forms. And we think, the story that we're trying to tell is one that we haven't seen really on screen before. And it's, we're calling it middle-class homelessness for lack of a better term, but it's,
bad phrase, but we're like, we can't come up with anything better.
Yeah, but it's, it's what happens when sort of like the bottom falls out and the character in the film has lost her job. She can't pay rent. She finds herself living in her car. She's doing her very best to maintain appearances, to seem like everything is okay. She's trying really hard to make that work. But it's that story. It's somebody who's like right at that edge and has sort of dipped below. She happens to have family who she is able to turn to and resources through that. So she's able to sort of pull herself back to the other side of that edge. But, not everybody has that available to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, at least, in hearing, we talked before on a previous Coffee with Bob, and hearing the idea behind the story and the explanation a little bit, and we'll dive into that a little bit more, is that it's so relevant today. Right. I mean, it's, especially with this pandemic and the job losses, and some people can't even recover for some of the job losses that are going on. So the relevance is there, and it's true.
Yeah.
And so Vivian, you're one of the writers, you're a director, and you're actually starring in it. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on that too?
Yeah. So yes, I'm doing a lot for this film. Yeah. So
I'm going to interrupt to just clarify. Vivian's the only writer. Vivian.
Oh, okay. The only writer. Oh, I'm sorry.
You wrote this script.
Yeah. And it's sort of interesting because I think all those things sort of were kind of gradual in terms of the development of this project in particular. But yeah, I would say, primarily my background is as an actor, and I've been an actor for about 15 years. And Rachel and I met in the acting program at USC, the theater school. And so mostly I've been, that's been my profession. And then I think gradually kind of, which happens, I think, to a lot of actors, like wanting to take more ownership over your career, wanting to generate stories yourself as opposed to just telling other people's stories. That became more and more interesting to me. And then, as Rachel pointed out, sort of undeniably, we've both lived in Hollywood, for most of that time, and seeing, it's been interesting because on the one hand, the neighborhood has gentrified, right? You've got all these sort of like really maybe terrible strip malls from the 70s, being bulldozed and making way for high-rise condominiums. And so the construction aspect is sort of is going one direction, but then like all around the condominiums is sort of like sprung up like tent cities. So it's been very strange, I think, just seeing that kind of
the widening gap.
Yeah, that's sort of like right, but like kind of right next to each other. So yeah, so and at the same time of me kind of wanting to like sort of, I think, write my own stories and tell stories that I thought were important, noticing that I thought that there was just something about that was very compelling. And something else that Rachel and I had talked a lot about is that idea of, like a lot of the depictions of homelessness that we see in films, such as The Soloist or Shelter. It's people who have been living on the streets for a long time. And I don't think we so rarely see a movie about someone who's sort of just at the very beginning of possibly kind of slipping through the cracks. And that's sort of that, because nobody like wakes up and like is like, oh, I've been living in my car for like 5 years. Like, no, right? Like, it's like, this has to be like, this is a gradual process that happens to people. It's like, oh, you kind of lose your job, or you're kicked out of where you're living, or your parents kick you out, or you age out of the foster care system, or, you go from doing drugs on the weekends to like doing drugs every day. It's like, there's something about like that kind of the moment when it's starting to kind of fall apart, and it could really go either way, that I think is really interesting, that I haven't seen before in film. So we're kind of hoping to explore that a little bit. And then at the same time, it is really a brother-sister story. Half the film is sort of Beth and her sort of experience with homelessness. And then the other half of the film is her brother, and he and his wife are going through IVF. And so he's sort of got his own personal struggles that she doesn't know anything about. So a huge theme of the film is about kind of the secrets that we keep from the people who love us the most. What do you have going on in your life that even your, closest family and friends don't know about?
Right.
So in a nutshell, that's what the film's about.
Wow. Interesting. Rachel, tell us a little bit how the WeFunder works.
Yeah, so the WeFunder is equity crowdfunding. If anybody watching has supported films previously through crowdfunding, it has most likely been traditional crowdfunding, donation-based, where, it's your family, it's your friends, it's somebody somehow personally, and you throw in $25 to just like support them. You're never going to see your money again. It's a gift from the deepest bottom of your heart because you love art, and we all appreciate that. Good for art. But this is different. This is equity investment. You are investing your money. You are getting a stake in the film itself. And then when the film makes profit down the line, that profit goes back to investors. So our investor agreement is a 120% on principal and then 40% net profits. Investors have to recoup to 120% before the profit share kicks in. So we as producers, we don't see any of the profit until the investors are more than whole. And part of the part of that is we're motivated to make profit on the film. We're not, we care about the story, but this is not like our, I don't know what, like a labor of love that we're going to shoot in the backyard and for our family on the weekends. No. Like we want this to be made well. We chose the script because it can be made with a modest budget and high quality. And we're setting ourselves up to maximize, the potential for profit. Of course, film's a risky investment. We can't like guarantee anything really, but we've set ourselves up to have the best shot possible at profit. And I think that's, I think it's exciting. It's also, I've been thinking lately about, so we get to the close of our campaign. We're in the last 2 weeks here. And I've just been thinking a lot about how very different this model is for financing a film. Normally financing is done with, 1 or 2 or 3 people or companies, and it's kind of behind closed doors. And then you go and you make the film and you get it to where it is picture locked and sound locked and color corrected, and it's lovely, and you show it to trusted eyeballs and you get feedback and you tweak it. And then like at the very end of that process, you would make it available to the public. And in this, it's taking that last step and putting it first. And it's, we started and we said, here's the project. And if this is the kind of content that you want to see, you have an opportunity here to contribute it to it being made. Normally, the amount of influence the public has is they can pick what to watch from Netflix. And maybe through the algorithms in 5 years, the kind of content that is being made would be changed based on what is getting viewership. Mm-hmm. But through equity crowdfunding like this, the public gets to come in and say, no, that's the kind of content I want, and I'm going to contribute to it being made right now. Like, they get to choose what's on the menu. Yeah. I think that's so cool. And like, how exciting would it be if things moved in that direction more instead of it just being like such a delay between what people want to be seeing and it actually like making it to production and making it to theaters and streaming. And so I don't know, that's been on my mind as something that's really interesting and exciting about the equity crowdfunding as a way to move a film forward.
Sure. Then you get to see the size of your audience up front almost, right?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything Rachel just said. It's so interesting to me that, at this point, I think we have like over 300 investors, and that is it's such a larger number of investors than most films. But what I didn't anticipate was, in a sense, we're building a community. We're in touch with these people, and like they've shared a lot of really personal stories with us about what drew them to the film. So it's been really good for us as well. It's sort of, we test our own ideas out, we sort of test our own concept, and hearing feedback from our investors, or again, just them sharing a personal connection they have with the themes of the film, whether it is the homelessness aspect or IVF or whatever it is, like, reminds us and sort of recommits us to approaching those topics with as much nuance and sensitivity as we can when we then go and make the film. So it's interesting because the investors are actually having an almost like creative and artistic input in a way. Like what they say to us, not necessarily like, giving us script notes, but like what they say to us is something that we're going to take into the film. So it becomes a very interesting two-way street, whereas a lot of times in the film industry, sort of the money people just write the check and go away. And, it's been very interesting for sure.
Wow. I think it's amazingly cool. And what drew me to even get in contact with you guys and get you on Coffee with Bob and help you, to promote this very worthwhile cause. Vivian, talk a little bit about some of the people you've got involved in this project, as well as from an actor perspective.
Yeah, so we're still we're kind of going through the beginnings of pre-production right now. So we're still casting, but we have Anthony Rapp attached to play the male lead, Ben, who he plays my character's brother in the film, which we're really excited about. He's such a good actor. He's also just done such an interesting, like, diverse body of work. I mean, people might know him from his work in Broadway. He's done, a good amount of theater in New York. And he obviously was in the original cast of Rent. So he's an incredible musical theater performer, but then also right now he's starring on Star Trek Discovery, which couldn't be more different from musical theater. And he's, so he's got sort of that whole franchise. So we're very excited to have him in the film. He did the short, we did a short film proof of concept, and he was in that. And just seeing his work in that makes me very excited to see what he's going to do with the role in the expanded feature. We definitely, as I was writing the feature script, I had him in mind, and it was a lot of fun to sort of write things that I'm imagining him saying. So
that's interesting that you had, when you were doing the writing, that you actually already had him in mind. Do you know him personally or something? How does that work?
No, it was because we had done the short film that we shot, 3 years ago now, was with some changes, essentially the first 20 minutes of the feature. And I knew, I kind of had the idea for like where the feature would go, but I hadn't written it yet. So I actually sat down and wrote the full script for the feature after we made the short. So after I had met him already, and I was like, oh, he's so good. Like this worked out so well. We really liked working together. So then I was like, just actually having acted opposite him, I then went away and wrote with him in mind. So I think it worked out well. I think the script was stronger for it, for sure, because I wasn't sort of just writing this character generically. Like right. I was picturing him saying it. I was picturing, him in those moments. So it was definitely a benefit to me as I was writing it, for sure.
Very cool. Now, so the writing process as a whole, for you, kind of take us through that. I mean, is it, it's pretty amazing to bring a story like this to life. You know what I mean? I'm always in awe of people who can do that, and so impressed. Take us through your process a little bit.
So I would say my writing process is obviously still evolving, but it's very different depending on exactly what I'm writing. So whether it is where I would say the biggest difference is if I'm writing a TV pilot, let's say, or I'm writing a feature film script, just because structurally those things there's similarities, but they're very different. Like a feature film has 3 acts, and then, a lot of TV pilots will have like 5 acts. So it's just the way it's like broken down is different. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer in 2 things. As of right now, but maybe it's because I need it because I'm a newer writer, but I'm a big believer in theme, and I'm a big believer in structure. So I like to I need to percolate a long time on what is the film about, or what is the story about, why am I doing this? Like, who are these people? And if it's an idea that doesn't go away, if I think about something for a long time, then I know I'm going to write it. But usually these things I have to like think about what the theme is going to be and what it's about for a long time, essentially, before I can like start. And then structure, it's just kind of, it's like anything that you would read in sort of a screenplay 101 book. It's like, okay, like what is the inciting incident? What are going to be sort of the act breaks? Like what happens? I do think a lot of what a writer does is come up with plot.
Yeah.
What is going to happen in the story, to support the theme. And then
what drew you to this theme? I mean, how did this theme come about? I mean, it's when you're talking about, almost a crisis within a family, so to speak, and family coming together in homelessness. What drew you to that, or how did that percolate?
Well, I think beyond just sort of realizing that, okay, I think there's an opportunity, seeing sort of outside of myself, there's an opportunity there for a story that hasn't been told. I think maybe the reason why the way through for me into that was a sibling relationship is because I'm very close to my sister. So she and I only have one sibling. So there's sort of something interesting to me about stories that are between just 2 siblings, because you're sort of like locked in with each other. There isn't a third sibling where you can go to and kind of like play against the other one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I think it must have its own fun dynamics, for people who have 2 siblings. but oh God, ganging up on the third one always, just rearranging that. But I've definitely always been drawn to movies about siblings. I don't think there's that many of them. And the ones that sort of I was thinking about when I was writing this script in terms of comps was You Can Count on Me or the Skeleton Twins. And there's just not that many of them, you know? And I think there's not that many specifically about a brother and a sister, you know? It'll be more common to be like two sisters or even two brothers. So I think just possibly, right, my own personal life bleeds in, which, you know, unconsciously or consciously, it's going to, in anything, I think you write. Otherwise, you're kind of kidding yourself. But yeah, I think that's probably why. So it just was that specifically, that relationship specifically was just interesting to me and relevant to my life. So I was like, yep, I think that's what it's going to be.
Awesome. And so where does the title Scrap come from?
That's a good question. I think that titles are funny. I think titles honestly pop into your head sometimes, and then it either is like, yes, that's it, or that's awful. No, I have to brainstorm like 15 other titles before I could think of it. This one was definitely a popped into your head thing. Like it was always Scrap. I think at one point it was sort of Scrap, and then there was like an alternate name for it, Pride. And I think just I liked the ambiguity of it, and I liked all the definitions. There's the idea of being part of the scrap heap, right? Being kind of like table scraps, like the leftover portion, the thing that's been thrown away. I think I like the adjective scrappy, you know? So Beth's like scrappy, she's a fighter, she's sort of trying to claw her way forward in the world. So I thought that all the and as well as a verb, right? To scrap. She and her brother, like we talked about, kind of locked in with each other. You know, they're fighting. So I liked all the meanings of that word, and I thought that it just really applied in a lot of ways to the themes of the film.
Awesome, interesting. And Rachel, so how did you guys get in? So Rachel, what drew you to this project to really lead the drive for producing it into the crowdfunding?
Well, I had been involved in the short, and then I was there as Vivian was writing and developing the feature, and you know, she proposed the two of us sort of partnering to move it forward, and I read the script and loved it. I mean, you know, the script. I've been thinking about, you know, what about a script gets me to respond. And aside from like the mechanics need to be there, it needs to have proper punctuation.
Spell check is good.
if I'm distracted because I'm like proofreading it while I'm reading it, it's very hard to get engaged. But I mean, I respond very strongly to themes. I know that about myself. It was funny to hear Vivian sort of identify that as something that she likes to write, but you know, it's not surprising that would be a point where we're both sort of on the same page. And you know, the feature script just really resonated for me. It moved me. It's funny. It drew an emotional response, which, you know, it's one thing to like cry when you watch movies. I cry all the time. I'm a big crier, but reading something on the page is a very different experience. Yeah. And so when something on the page, particularly, you know, it's even very different from like a book, a novel. Reading a screenplay it's a little weird because it's not meant to be read. It's not literature. It's meant to be shot and viewed. It's you know, film is a visual medium. So when a script on the page can elicit an emotional response, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, this has something happening here. Great. And then, you know, I love working with Vivian. I think our strengths complement each other really well. There's a lot of mutual respect and we communicate well. Like we have a good partnership. It's enjoyable to work together. And you know, when you're when you're looking at the possibility of going down a road with a feature film, it can be a long road. You need to really like and respect the person you are working with. So, you know, it checked all the boxes, and we looked at other ways to finance the film. And we, you know, when we heard about equity crowdfunding, we had a friend who had financed her feature through WeFunder in 2020. They finished their campaign at the beginning of 2020. Mm-hmm. And that was when we heard about WeFunder, and we'd never really heard about equity crowdfunding before. And we started to look into it, and it just seemed like the way to go with this project. We wanted to put it out there. We wanted to bring people into it. But it has certainly sort of exceeded our expectations in terms of what, not even our expectations, it's exceeded our like imagination of what was possible in terms of like building that community around it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So I think where this is going for you guys is just going to be amazing. Do you see future collaborations doing this?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we have another film that we have in mind for potentially the second feature we would be shooting. Vivian?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Rachel has a production company called A Season of Rain, and she has produced, you know, a lot of shorts and web series, but this Scrap is the first feature under that production company's banner. So one of the things we talked about was, we're sort of kind of developing a slate now and sort of thinking, okay, like what are the next 3 films? Oh, wow. And what is maybe something that unites those films, even though if they're, you know, different stories, obviously different genres, but like, what is it? And Rachel has I'm going to get it wrong.
Mandate.
Rachel has a mandate, which I love, you know, and it really speaks to sort of stories that interest me, which take it away, Rachel.
Is to cultivate and shepherd stories about challenging, complex women.
And, you know, that's not to say, obviously, like, you know,
it's in no way to the exclusion of challenging, complex men.
Yes, you know, challenging, complex people in general. But I think, you know, because obviously we are 2 women, you know, I mean, I certainly write scripts that have a lot of men in it, but it is interesting that I do, and not even really through, I think, a conscious decision, but my protagonists tend to all be women. So that seems to align with Rachel's mission statement rather well. And I would say I strive for them to be challenging and complex. So maybe it doesn't always work out that way, but you know, by the time the revision process is over, hoping that those characters are challenging and complex. So yeah, we'd love to make additional features, you know, assuming Rachel will still speak to me after we finish Scrap.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to Scrap because I love character-driven films. I love films that have a good message to it as well, too. And that's not typical for guys, I guess. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good action film as well, too. And I'm a sci-fi geek, so I'm a Star Trek fan. So that's how I know about your star. But I do love really good character-driven films, and I'm certainly looking forward to this. And if you all out there want to be producers, go to wefunder.com /scrap.film and get involved. This is a good opportunity for you to have a say in actual content that is getting out there. And I see this as being a wave of the future for you guys. And I see nothing but good things coming from this film. That's for sure, too. I'm certainly excited to see how you guys evolve and how your production company evolves over time here, Rachel. And I would really welcome you guys to join me more on future Coffee with Bobs. I hope you would like to do that because I'd like to be able to promote you guys as much as possible. And maybe next time we can do a little Q&A session with some of the viewers.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Again, if you're all interested in being production people, go to wefunder.com/scrap.film and not even donate, invest today. And if you're all on LinkedIn or Facebook or watching on YouTube, go to LinkedIn, make sure you're connecting with Rachel and Vivian, make sure you're following them, you're engaging with them, because you'll get to see everything that's going on. You guys have a YouTube channel?
We don't have a YouTube channel.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, watch for it, because I'm sure they're going to get one going soon.
We should.
Probably a good idea. All right. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. You all have a wonderful weekend, and the very best of luck to Scrap, the movie.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Bob.
very much.
All right. Take care. I'm going to end the broadcast.